The human body is an amazing machine that needs energy to operate. The body is able to use food for energy and initiate cell growth through metabolism, which was designed to be perfectly regulated and balanced. This regulated balance is disturbed when the body begins to store abnormally large amounts of fat or lipid. It is at this point that the human body becomes at risk for developing obesity or overweight. Obesity is the accumulation of excess body fat. It leads to a metabolic syndrome that rapidly increases the risk of diseases, which can severely damage your health and remove years off your life. A person may suffer heart disease, diabetes, strokes, and heart attack. Increased wear and tear on the skeletal system can lead to joint and back pain.
Within the chronic disease spectrum, we have noticed that almost all of the patients who are diabetic are also hypertensive or high cholesterol. And so the three of them seems to go hand in hand. What we've also noticed is that most of these patients who are high cholesterol diabetes, even if before they become outrightly hypertensive and diabetic, we also find that most of these people are overweight. If you are overweight and your blood pressure is on the verge of getting up there, your blood sugar is at the verge of getting up there, or even your cholesterol is at the verge, we say that you have sort of metabolic syndrome. You are someone that we know will develop one or two of the, during your lifetime. So we know that there is a very close relationship between diabetes, hypertension, and cholesterol. And hence the reason why doing just one of the actions, which is controlling your weight and exercising, has the added benefit of controlling all three together. This is so important that some patients who are actually diabetic, some physicians will put them on medication to control the cholesterol and the pressure, even if the cholesterol and pressure is not outrightly high. And this underscores why we think it's important that all three be controlled at the same time, because they come hand in hand in most patients that we see.
Obesity can be hereditary, and the genetic factors can affect appetite, the rate at which energy is burnt, and how the body stores fat. Increased risk factors include overeating, irregular meals, and a lack of daily exercise.
You want to stay away from foods that are more refined, especially the carbohydrate type foods that are more refined. So maybe instead of eating white bread, you eat a whole grain bread or whole wheat bread. Instead of eating just a white rice, maybe you might want to make sure that you have some legumes, some part of your diet, which will give you a little bit of fiber. And in saying the legumes, and in terms of weight control, some of the fiber that's in legumes are soluble fiber, and that slows your digestive process. So when it slows the digestion, if your food takes a longer time to go through your system, then you will feel less hungry. The satiety effect lasts a little longer, so you wouldn't want to eat as much and as frequently. Using a lot of vegetables and not cooking the vegetables, overcooking it, but just steaming it to break the crisp, and whatever vegetables you can eat raw, you eat it raw. Cabbage and carrot don't have to be cooked. Pumpkin you will have to cook. So for instance, whenever you eat something that has to be cooked, you cook it. Some things just have to be cooked, well cooked. But Christophine don't have to be boiled to death. You just need to break the crisp a little bit and still be able to chew it and not have it mashed. You want to be able to use a lot of fruits. When I say a lot of fruit, let me qualify that. Not that you're sitting and eat a bowl of mangoes at one time, but you eat fruits and replace the juices by eating the fruit in its natural form. Because fruits were made for a purpose. When we take that fruit and we make it into a juice, it goes through your system much faster. And you and I know that when you drink a cup of juice, 2 seconds later you're actually forgetting that you drank that cup of juice. You're looking for something else. When we're thirsty, water is the best quench thirster. So we need to make sure that we we live in a hot climate, and we need to make sure that we put in sufficient fluid in our body, but not in the form of juices and things that will give us extra sugars, but something like water, which is pure and will give us what we need to keep our bodies well hydrated. Where fat is concerned, we also have to concern ourselves with moderating the amount of fat. We do need some fat in the diet. Our cells need fat. We just need it. We need it as a part of our energy source. But we have to recognize that not everything we eat has to be something that's high fat. And this is what is happening. We eat a lot of foods now outside of the home, and we have no control over how it's being prepared. And we need to get back a little bit into preparing meals at home, and this is a big issue for me, that we really need to get back into preparing meals at home, giving children their food to take to work. I mean, there are many fast food places, and I'm not against the fast food places, but sometimes you walk through town 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning, and those places are bursting with customers, and you wonder, well, didn't these people have breakfast at home? No, they didn't. So they come out and they purchase it, and it's good for the businesses, but it's not always something that you want to do on a daily basis, as you have no control over what you're actually consuming.
Being overweight and obese can affect body image and damage self-esteem. In some cases, this can cause social anxiety and depression. The risk of developing health problems increases as the body mass index increases. The body mass index is a measure commonly used to determine overweight and can also be used to diagnose obesity.
The body mass index is a mathematical formula that is used to calculate the body mass index, and it takes into account your height and your weight and tells you on what scale you are. And on average, between 18 and 25 is considered normal for most persons. If you're above 25, you're considered overweight, and certainly if you're above 30, you'll be considered obese. So for most persons out there, knowing your BMI, that is, knowing your height and weight relationship and plugging it into that formula, can actually tell you.
The drawback with the body mass index is that it doesn't account for body composition. So it doesn't tell you whether your weight is muscle or whether it's fat. So then there are other ways of measuring body fat composition. So you do a tricep skin fold, or you do a subscapular skin fold, or you can measure here. And that, using another table, that you would be able to tell the person's percentage body fat. Using that percentage body fat, you can then calculate the amount of weight of that person's body that is actually fat versus lean body mass. So that is another way of qualifying when you say that someone is obese, because you can have a 300-pound muscle man and you can have a 300-pound, 5-foot tall woman, and you have two completely same weight, but you have two completely different body compositions. So it's a matter of looking at the entire person and not just looking at their weight to their height in order to guide them as to which direction they would need to go. Also looking at the person's the waist circumference and regards to the hip, because for most of us, when we gain weight, it's to the mid portion. For those who are fortunate and have big hips, they're safer than us, because the larger the waist circumference in regards to the hip, the greater your chances are of developing some cardiovascular disease later on in life. The fat is here, it's closer to the heart. If it's here, it's further away from the heart.
In the long term, overweight and obesity can cause severe damage to the body. Common physical problems that result from obesity or being overweight include difficulties breathing, difficulties walking or running, increased sweating, pain in the knees and back, skin conditions such as acne. Obesity is on the rise and noted by dietitians and medical experts as one of the most common conditions contributing to chronic disease.
Diabetes, hypertension, obesity. That's the three main things that I'm seeing, and even having been in the hospital, that are some of the major issues. And recognizing that obesity is a commonality in a lot of different chronic diseases. So I think that a lot of people now are focusing more on managing their weight, because they know that some way down the line that weight could contribute to their ill health in the future.
Also on the rise is obesity among children. This presents serious risk for the development of diseases in the lives of young people. Overweight children are far more likely to become overweight adults than are children who maintain normal weight through adolescence.
If we are training children in a way that they will be unhealthy, which means when I'm old and I'm unhealthy, my kids are young and unhealthy, who is taking care of the nation? Who is going to do the work? So I have to preserve that. As a parent, it is my responsibility to preserve that and to make sure that my children grow up in a healthy way, and that I assist them in controlling their weight. You can't control everything kids do, because they go to school, you go to work. You have no idea what they do, right? But you can control the amount of money you put into your kids' hands to buy things out there. You can pack your kids' lunch and you can pack a snack, and at least you know you have that. And if they have that, chances of them going out to purchase something may not happen, or at least it will happen less frequently. So children need to be fed. You don't need to deprive them. You need to feed them, but you have to keep a tab on what you're feeding them. Just as you feed yourself a balanced diet, kids need a balanced diet. We need to make sure that our kids are not sedentary and not sitting around. And one of the things, I've recently completed a course on childhood and adolescent weight management, and one of the things that were reinforced is setting a 2-hour limit for sedentary activity. So a child should not be watching television more than 2 hours a day, or especially a child who is at risk, who you see is leading in the way of becoming overweight. So you regulate that. You take off the television, go outside. And when I tell my kids to go outside, they say, "Mama, what are we going to do outside?" I say, "What did I do when I was your age? I didn't have a television." You know, and it might sound foreign to you because you're younger, but I didn't have a television growing up. And so we had to find things, we had to find ways of occupying ourselves and entertaining ourselves. We had 5 in the family. I have 3 kids at home, and they can do something among themselves. And sometimes I have to get up as the parent and go outside with them in order to facilitate, to start the process of them being active. So we can't sit in front of the television and tell our kids go outside and play. Parents have to be examples. Kids learn from examples. But if you have a kid who is sitting in the house all day long, they don't need to be snacking all day long. And when they do snack, you make sure that you put things there, fruits, you put some vegetables and put a little dip, something that they can munch on during the course of the day, but it's not something that's calorically dense. Soft drinks and things like that. I'm not saying that you're never going to drink a soft drink, but let it be maybe a Christmas time thing. It shouldn't be coming into the house all the time. If whatever you put in the refrigerator is what your kids are going to eat, whatever you show your kids is okay to eat, that is what they're going to eat. They're not going to go out there and choose something that's healthy when mommy at home never buys that. You grow up not eating vegetables, so you don't cook vegetables for your kids because you don't think they're gonna like it. How do you know? You know, unless you try it. And then you don't just try something with a kid and say, well, they don't like it. You have to try to find innovative ways of including it in a meal. You cook a pilau and your kids won't eat peas, so you put some dry peas in there. You can put lentils in there, you can put dry pigeon peas in there. You have some mixed vegetables in a frozen packet, you put it in there too. When they eat it, they're going to get the vegetables in. So we have to find ways of innovatively putting things into the diet and not necessarily bombarding our kids and eat, you know, because that can have a negative impact as well.
To treat obesity, a change in diet and an increase in physical exercise are important. A dietitian can help you lose weight by giving nutritional advice on buying and preparing foods and designing a weight management plan.
Not everyone that comes for a weight management program is someone who is severely obese. They might be just moderately overweight, but they want to get themselves back in check, but not knowing how far they should go to get themselves back in check. So on our weight management program, you start out by letting the person know where they are and where you suggest that they need to go. Now, if a client chooses to go to underweight status, you can't prevent that, but you can carry them to where you think it's a relatively safe place for them. So that person needs to know, rethink food and rethink eating and how they're able to manage their portion sizes, and so is very important. I do not necessarily support the use of pills and things like that for weight management, because when you look at it in reality, you can't take the pills forever. If you go on a diet that's a quick fix, a liquid diet or something, you can't do that forever. You must go back to natural food. So I think in weight management, people have to learn, have to be retaught what food is and why they're supposed to be using food. Not that they're as we say, living to eat. Right? Food is just there, so you have to eat it. But learning to understand that you're taking in food actually to keep your body healthy, to energize your body, and not necessarily using it in excess. So guiding that person as to how you can use the foods that they normally use, but in appropriate portions to keep them at a particular caloric level, and then incorporating some type of activity so that the person, the energy that the person expends, the energy that the person burns off, has always to be higher than the amount of energy that the person is taking in. And this is why when people go to the gym, they can gym for 2 years and they can gym 3 hours a day and they see no progress because they eat, then they go to the gym, and when they come home they put in more calories than they burnt off. So even though they're getting that workout, they're not seeing changes in the weight. Diet and exercise has to be collaborated. Exercise is always encouraged, but it can never go separate from having an appropriate diet.
Successful weight reduction requires modification of dietary habits. Starvation and crash diets do not achieve the desired results. Set individual realistic goals for achieving weight loss. Overtasking the body and mind will not yield realistic expectations. In cases of obesity and overweight, people with accompanying risk factors such as high blood pressure and high lipid elevations may use medications as appropriate forms of treatment. Being predisposed to obesity and overweight does not mean you will become overweight. Steps can be taken to prevent the onset of this condition. The muscles account for most of the body's energy consumption. When physically active, the body obtains the energy it requires from fats, carbohydrates, and oxygen, and in so doing burns fat. Keeping physically active significantly reduces the risk of becoming obese.
Our muscles are the main work organs of our bodies. Of course, the liver is used to manufacture a lot of the energy that has been stored. So everything that you eat, all the foods that you eat, is eventually turned into glucose in our bodies, and the glucose is used by our bodies and used to metabolize this wonderful drug called ATP. Other foods that you eat, like protein and fats, they are actually stored. So they're stored as protein for muscles and fat for fatty tissue. Our bodies cannot use fat and protein for energy. It can only use glucose for energy. So when the muscles start working, it uses all the ATP that is being stored, and after it uses up the ATP that is being stored, if it needs additional ATP, it will now turn to either the fat or the protein to get additional energy. The first thing it's going to turn to is the fat. And that's why exercising is such a wonderful way of breaking down fats, because as soon as your body uses up the stored ATP, the first place it turns to for additional energy is your fatty tissue. And by the way, ATP is used up very, very easily. The stored ATP is used up very, very easily. Just mildly like this. If you run a 100-meter race, by the time you start to the end, almost all of your ATP in your body is already used up. That means if you extend any more energy beyond that, it is now turning to fat. Turning to fat for the remainder of the energy. And through a process called gluconeogenesis, where the fat is actually turned back into glucose, it uses the fat. Now, if you continue to work, you continue to metabolize, and your fat is being used up, then and only then your body turns to your muscle structure to use it as energy. By that time, you're probably going into a stage of starving, and I don't think anybody's going to get to the place of starving where they're actually using their protein to produce their energy. Most of us, by the mere fact of life and living on a daily, day-to-day basis, by doing regular exercise every day for most days of the week, As your body uses up the stored ATP, it is going to turn to your fat to metabolize that into new energy. And so that's a wonderful way of keeping the fat down and also decreasing your chance of getting diabetes. There are other benefits to this. One big benefit is controlling your blood pressure. And again, another benefit is controlling your cholesterol. Now, if by doing one simple action, you're able to control your blood sugar, your blood pressure, and your cholesterol, that has a tremendous effort, that tremendous benefit of increasing and improving your lifestyle, improving your life, your energy, the way you feel about yourself, and your general health. And I don't think anybody can ask for more than that.
There are plenty diets and slimming products that claim to offer quick fixes. But obesity is not something that can be cured or brought under clinical control within a few weeks or months. Treatment such as diet and exercise may need to continue for years.
People just have to remember that you have to go back to the old rules. Eat well, exercise, maintain a good emotional state, and keep close contact with the spiritual part of you.
Be determined, make the commitment, and rise to the challenge to improve your eating and exercise habits. This will enhance overall health and quality of life.